Library of Heaven's Path. Chapter 66, This Can't Be True. Only 10 points? Not only did Cao Xiang feel himself going insane, even Elder Mo and Elder Shang Chen couldn't help but blink their eyes in disbelief. To apply for an enlightenment will trial with just that meager trust level. May I ask, where did your self-confidence come from? If you wish to take a student off the hands of another teacher, you should at least possess unparalleled standing in the heart of the student. Otherwise, you are just making a fool out of yourself. Initially, we thought that his trust level toward you should be able to reach at least 20. Even though it isn't a really high number, it is still within an acceptable range. Yet. The heck, 10. Are you sure that you aren't joking with us? Elder Shang Chen's face darkened. An inauspicious omen loomed in his mind. One didn't fear a godly opponent, only a pig-like teammate. It was clear that the pig-like teammate had already appeared. By the side, the corners of Shangbin's mouth twitched and white foam almost spilled from it. Before we came here, you declared proudly that Lu Yang would definitely be willing to come under your tutelage once more. With this level of trust, tutelage it was, you said? Tutelage your head. The heck? You are trying to fool me, aren't you? So what if his trust level in me is just 10? Lu Yang has a skeptical personality and he doesn't believe anyone easily. His trust level in me might just be 10, but as long as you fail to exceed that, I will still be the victor. A moment later, Cao Xiang recovered and howled at Zhang Xuan. Skeptical personality? If he truly has such a personality, then the situation makes sense. Elder Mo nodded his head. Humans differed from one to the other. There were a few who were born trusting, while others were born skeptical. No matter how close and amiable a relationship one possessed with him, he couldn't help but be suspicious of them. This had something to do with the situation one grew up in. If one was born in a treacherous place full of schemes, it wouldn't be an easy task to establish trust with them. Based on his judgment, Lu Yang should possess a trust level of around 17 to 18 towards Cao Xiang. Yet, it turned out to just be 10. If it was true that the former had this kind of personality, then everything fitted together perfectly. That's right. As long as his trust level towards you does not exceed 10 points, then it is still unknown who the one laughing at the end will be. Shangbin's eyes lit up and he nodded his head. He decided to place his trust in Cao Xiang once more. Cao Lishi might not be famous in the academy, and he wasn't a star teacher either. However, he had many good reviews. When put against Zhang Xuan, it was like the difference between a delicacy and dung, totally incomparable. If the former only had 10 points, the latter was bound to have far worse results. At this point, the crowd continued staring at the other crystal ball. The light had yet to fully fade from it yet, and it was still shrouded in a thin layer of light. Why isn't the result out yet? Shenbai frowned slightly. Different illusory realms appear in the tests of the Will Inquisition crystal, so naturally, the time taken for each of them will be different as well. It is normal for some to be faster than the others. Hearing the words of his goddess, Shangbin stepped forward and putting on a knowledgeable look, he explained. As the grandson of the head of the Education Bureau, he knew quite a lot more about the Enlightenment Will trial than most of the other teachers. Normally, this kind of acting cool could attract quite a lot of screams, given his dashing looks and extraordinary aura. Just that, it was a pity that the areas around his eyes were bruised black and his face was swollen red. His lips were as though two hanging sausages and he wasn't much different from the hunchback from the clock tower. In fact, it seemed as though the word dashing had nothing to do with him at all. Then, will the results be better if the test is completed faster, or if it is completed slower? Ignoring his attempt to act cool, Shenbai continued asking. Of course faster is better. If the trial is completed faster, it shows that the student undergoing the trial trusts his teacher from the bottom of his heart to the point that there is no need to even ponder over his instructions. On the other hand, if the trial takes a long period of time, it means that the student does not trust his teacher, and a negative score could very possibly appear. With his hands behind his back, Shangbin smiled faintly. With a confident look, he said, "Shenlishi, trust me. I might not have undergone the Enlightenment Will trial, but I have read numerous books regarding it. For Lu Yang to be coerced by Zhang Xianlishi to acknowledge him as his master, he is bound to hold some resentment against him. It would be normal for him to score a -10 or so." Just as he was declaring proudly, rationalizing the reason behind the theory out for Shen Bai Ru, he felt a tug on his shirt, interrupting him from his recount on the ending he expected to occur. "What are you doing?" Shangbin knitted his eyebrows together in displeasure. It was hard to him to gain an opportunity to perform before his goddess. Yet, someone just had to interrupt him at such an untimely period. Turning around, it was Cao Xiang. At this moment, Cao Xianglishi's eyes were filled with fear and his body trembled uncontrollably. The confidence he had a moment ago had completely faded. He pointed forward and said, "Shang Shui, look. Shui is a young master." Looking towards the direction of the finger, the glow from the crystal had finally disappeared without a trace, and a line of numbers had floated to the surface. Why? Could it be that his score isn't a negative? In the midst of his words, Shangbin glanced at the numbers that have appeared on the crystal, and in that instant, he almost bit his tongue to commit suicide. How is this possible? This. I don't believe it. Shangbin was about to go crazy. The numbers were clearly displayed on the crystal ball 64. This meant that the level of trust had reached 64 points. A fellow who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination actually managed to get his students' trust in him to reach the level of a master teacher, comparable to that of the trust between a child and his parents. How was this possible? Shangbin looked at Cao Xiang. At this moment, the thought of killing him even flashed through his mind. He felt a stifling sensation in his chest and blood seemed to be welling up at the back of his throat. It was difficult for him to find an opportunity to act cool before his goddess. He proudly declared that one's results would get worse as time went by, only for such a situation to occur. The heck, are you playing with me? Furthermore, Cao Lishi, can you be a bit more useful? Didn't you say that the student has a skeptical personality? My ass, he has a skeptical personality. How can someone skeptical hold 64 points of trust towards others? Didn't you say that you are confident in winning? 10 points against 64 points. The heck do you intend to win like this? Tears streaming down his face, Shangbin felt a stinging sensation on his face. It felt as though his face had been slapped mercilessly by someone else several times. At this moment, he wished fervently to find a hole to hide in. 64. Different from the disbelief and mental breakdown of the other two, Elder Mo stood up abruptly and trembled in agitation. This level of trust had already reached the standards of a master teacher. Even for him, it was the first time he had seen such results. A fellow who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination could actually induce such trust from his students? How did he do it? Furthermore, it had just been 2 days since the start of school. Even if this Zhang Xianlishi and Lu Yang had stayed together throughout the entire period, at maximum, they could only have 30 hours of interaction with one another. In such a short period of time, to get one's trust level beyond 60. Even the legendary one-star master teacher would find it difficult to achieve such a feat. There were also different tiers to master teachers. 1 star was the lowest of them all. Even so, the prestige and influence they held were sufficient to drive others insane. The 2 elders, is this considered as my victory? Couldn't be bothered with the stunned Shangbin and Cao Xiang, Zhang Xuan directed his gaze toward Shang Chen and Mo Xiang. Impossible, there must be a problem with the crystal. Otherwise, how can he have such a high trust level? I will not accept this result. Cao Xiang howled. It was no wonder that he is unwilling to accept it. It was as though a beggar he had been interacting with suddenly turned out to be an emperor. As someone who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, he thought that the results would definitely end up as a negative. Yet, not only was it not a negative, it turned out to be an overwhelming 64, surpassing all teachers within the school. His will could already be considered rather strong given that he had yet to go insane at this point. I also agree with Cao Lashi's words. How can he induce such a level of trust in his students? If it is true, doesn't that mean that even Lu Sun and Wang Chao are incomparable to him? Shang Bin stepped forward and said through gritted teeth. Hearing the words of the two, Elder Mo was about to say something when he saw Lu Yang, who had just completed the trial, walking over to Zhang Xuan with glowing eyes that were filled with reverence.